morning, all. Today we are going to learn about the folding of embryo. During the fourth week, a significant event in the establishment of body forms is folding. The folding converts flat trilaminar embryonic disc into a cylindrical embryo. The folding occurs in both longitudinal and transverse plane. The longitudinal and transverse foldings occurs simultaneously. Concurrently, there is a relative constrictions at junction of embryo and yolk sac. The folding is due to rapid growth of central nervous system and somites. The growth rate at the side of the embryonic disc fails to keep pace with the rate of growth in the long axis as the embryo increases rapidly in length. The longitudinal folding, mainly due to the rapid growth of neural tube. Ends of the trilaminar germ disc folds ventrally and produce head and tail folds. Beginning of fourth week, the neural tube in cranial region grows very rapidly. It thickens to form the primordium of brain. As the embryo grows, the head region projects over the procaudal plate or the buccopharyngeal membrane or future sites of stomatium. Folding of the caudal end of the embryo result primarily from the growth of distal part of neural tube, the primordium of spinal cord. As the embryo grows, the tail region projects over the cloacal membrane, the future site of anus. With the formation of head and tail folds, the part of yolk sac become enclosed within the embryo. In this way, a tube lined by endoderm is formed in the embryo. This is the primitive gut, from which most of the gastrointestinal tract is derived. At first, the gut is in wide communication with yolk sac. The part of the gut cranial to this communication and in the head fold is called as foregut. The part caudal to the communication and in the tail fold it is called as the hindgut, while the intervening part is called as midgut that forms due to the formation of lateral fold that converge ventrally. The communication with the yolk sac become progressively narrower. As a result of this change, the yolk sac become small and inconspicuous, and now it is called as definitive yolk sac, also called as umbilical vessels. The narrow channel connecting to the gut is called as vitellointestinal duct, and it is also called as vitelline duct or yolk stalk. These ducts become elongated and eventually disappears. Transverse folding. The flat germinal disc also folds in horizontal or transverse direction. Right and left lateral edges of trilaminar germ disc not only grows laterally but also moves ventrally and finally medial to meet in the midline. As the lateral edge of embryonic disc grows, they forms right and left lateral folds. The transverse foldings is proceed by rapidly growing somates and neural tube. The primordium of ventrolateral wall grows laterally, ventrally, and medially towards the median plane, rolling the edge of embryonic disc and forming a roughly cylindrical embryo. As a result, the embryo come to enclosed all around by ectoderm, except in the region through which the vitellointestinal duct passes. Here, there is a circular aperture, which may now called as umbilical opening. The development of proximal mesoderm and the formation of somates is mainly responsible for transverse folding of embryo. As the proximal mesoderm starts developing, the ectoderm is raised bilaterally and the neural groove forms between these bilateral ridges. The proximal mesoderm later forms somates. The formation of somates and the neural tube further raises surface ectoderm dorsally. The folding facilitate growth and expansion of amniotic cavity that come to surrounds the embryo on all sides. In this way, the embryo now floats in amniotic fluid, which fills the amniotic cavity. The convergence of folds on ventral surface forms tubular investment of amnion for connecting stalk. This causes obliteration of extraembryonic coelom. Now the amnion forms a covering for umbilical cord. Next, the connecting stalk. The extraembryonic mesoderm, which connects the embryo to the trophoblast, forms the connecting stalk. As the embryo grows, the area of attachment of the connecting stalk become narrow and it moves to ventral aspect of the embryo. In this region of the umbilical opening, by now blood vessels have developed in embryo and also in the placenta. These set of blood vessels are in communication by means of arteries and veins passes through the connecting stalk. At first, there are two arteries and two veins in the connecting stalk, but later the right vein disappears. That means the left vein is left. This tube of amnion and the structures within it constitute the umbilical cord. This cord progressively increases in length to allow free movement of the embryo within the amniotic cavity. At the time of birth, the cord about half meter long and about 2 centimeter in diameter.